My name is April, and until 2 weeks ago, I believed my life was pretty stable. I worked as a financial analyst at Marshall Financial Group, a Fortune 500 company with branches across the country. I lived in a lovely apartment in Boston with my boyfriend of 3 years, Tyler. We met during my senior year of college, and our relationship progressed quickly. After graduation, I landed my dream job, and Tyler moved in with me when I signed the lease on a larger place. I remember the night everything changed. It was Madison's birthday party, one of my closest friends from work. The celebration took place at an upscale bar downtown, featuring a private room in the back. The party was lively when I decided to step out for a moment. As I walked down the hallway, I spotted a couple in a dim corner near the coat check. I didn't mean to stare, but the guy's profile looked oddly familiar. When he turned slightly, my heart sank. It was Tyler, my Tyler, with his hands all over a blonde I didn't recognize. I stood frozen, disbelief washing over me as I processed the scene. Then the anger surged like a tidal wave. "Are you kidding me?" I shouted, loud enough for several people to notice. Tyler jumped back as if shocked. "April, this isn't," he began. "Don't you dare say this isn't what it looks like," I interrupted, my voice trembling. Because it looked exactly like my boyfriend cheating on me at my friend's birthday celebration. "April, please, let's go home and talk about this," he pleaded. "Home?" I laughed, though it sounded hollow. "You mean my apartment that I pay for? The one you live in rent-free because I was foolish enough to think you love me? I want your things out of my apartment by tomorrow." I turned and walked out, ignoring Tyler calling my name. Madison followed me outside and helped me catch a cab. I was too furious to cry. That would come later when I was alone in my apartment, surrounded by reminders of what a fool I had been. For the next 2 weeks, I immersed myself in work, staying late and tackling extra projects. But every time I returned to my apartment, the emptiness hit me. It wasn't that I missed Tyler, the anger was still too raw for that. Instead, it hit me that I had no real connections to Boston aside from my job. My true home was back in Pinewood, a small town in upstate New York. The house my dad had built with his own hands was left to me when he passed away from cancer 8 years ago. I was just 19 and in my sophomore year of college when it happened. Mom called me at 3 a.m. with the news that Dad had taken a turn for the worse. But by the time I made the 6-hour drive home, he was already gone. He had left the house to me in his will, ensuring I would always have a place to call home. After the funeral, I returned to college, trying to focus on my studies. Mom lived in the house alone for about a year before she dropped a bombshell. She was getting remarried to a man named Robert, who had 2 teenage kids from a previous marriage. I wasn't pleased. It felt too soon after Dad's passing, and the thought of strangers living in our family home made me uneasy. But Mom insisted she was lonely and that Robert made her happy. In the end, I agreed to let them move in. What else could I do? I loved my mom, and the house was too large for her to manage alone. After graduating, I took the job in Boston instead of returning home. Part of my decision to move back was the career opportunity, but if I'm honest, a larger part was that I no longer felt at home there. During the few holiday visits, I felt like a stranger. Mom was always busy with Robert or his kids, Emma and Jason. They were polite enough, but it was clear I wasn't part of their new family dynamic. As I sat in my half-empty Boston apartment, scrolling through my phone and ignoring Tyler's messages, I made a choice. It was time to return home, to my true home. My company had a branch in Albany, just a 30-minute drive from Pinewood. I could transfer there, reclaim my house, and start anew. The next morning, I called my boss, Mike, and requested a meeting. "April, what's on your mind?" he asked as I settled into a chair across from his desk. "I need to request a transfer to the Albany branch," I said, getting straight to the point. He studied me for a moment before sighing. "You're one of our best analysts, April. I'd hate to lose you completely. Let me make some calls and see what we can arrange." 3 days later, Mike confirmed my transfer. I would be taking a small pay cut, but I could manage that. The cost of living in Pinewood was significantly lower than in Boston. That evening, I called Mom to share the news. "Mom, I have something to tell you," I said when she picked up. "I'm moving back home, to the house." There was a pause. "Oh, when?" "In about 2 weeks. I just wanted to let you know so you could get my room ready." Another pause, this one longer. "Your room? But Emma's been using that room since she started college." "Well, she'll have to move to one of the other bedrooms," I said, trying to keep my tone even. It's my house, Mom. Of course, she replied quickly. It's just unexpected, but we'll be happy to have you back. Something in her voice suggested otherwise, but I brushed the thought aside. Great, I'll see you soon then. As I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that my return wouldn't be as straightforward as I had hoped. Still, I was determined to reclaim my life and my house, no matter the obstacles. The 2 weeks leading up to my move flew by in a blur. I terminated my lease, sold most of my furniture, and packed everything that was important to me. My friends threw me a farewell party at our favorite bar, deliberately avoiding the one where I had caught Tyler cheating. The drive to Pinewood took nearly 6 hours. When I arrived at the 2-story colonial house on Maple Street, my house, I noticed the blue paint was a shade darker than I remembered, and the flower beds that Mom had always tended to were a bit overgrown. Before I could grab my bags, the front door swung open, and Mom stepped out. She looked older than when I had last seen her at Christmas, new lines around her eyes and more gray streaks in her brown hair. "April," she said, walking toward me with open arms. "Welcome home." I hugged her, inhaling the familiar scent of her vanilla perfume. "Hi, Mom." Robert appeared in the doorway, watching us. He was a tall man with thinning hair and a constant frown. I didn't dislike him, but I had never really warmed up to him either. "April," he nodded as I approached the house. His eyes scanned my car, which was packed to the brim with boxes and suitcases. "Looks like you brought your whole life with you." "Just the essentials," I replied, forcing a smile. "Most of it's clothes and work things." He grunted, not offering to help with my bags. "Well, Emma's moved her things to the guest room. Your old room is ready." Mom gave Robert a look I couldn't quite decipher before turning to me. "Come inside, honey. You must be exhausted from the drive." The inside of the house felt both familiar and strange. The layout remained the same, but the furniture had been rearranged and many childhood decorations were gone, replaced by unfamiliar items. As we walked through the dining room, Emma and Jason emerged from upstairs. Jason, now 17 and nearly 6 feet tall, gave me an awkward nod. "Hey," he said. "Hey, Jason, you've grown," I replied. Emma, 19 and dressed in what looked like designer clothes, stood with her arms crossed. Her expression made it clear she wasn't thrilled to see me. "So you're actually staying," she remarked, not bothering to frame it as a question. "Emma," Mom warned. "What? It's not like it's a secret she's moving in." I took a deep breath. "It's good to see you too, Emma." Dinner that night was tense. Robert talked about his job at the local bank. Jason mumbled responses when addressed, and Emma picked at her food while occasionally glaring at me. "So," Robert eventually said, "how long do you think you'll be staying?" I paused with my fork halfway to my mouth. "I'm not just staying, I'm moving back. This is my permanent home now." Robert exchanged a glance with Mom. "Right, of course. It's just that we've gotten used to certain arrangements around here. I'm sure we can all adjust," I said evenly. "I'll be working full-time at the Albany branch, so I'll be out of the house during the day." "I had to give up the big room because of you," Emma blurted out. "I've been using it for 2 years, and now I'm crammed into that tiny guest room." I waited for Mom or Robert to intervene, to remind Emma that it was my house and my room, but they stayed silent, looking uncomfortable. "Actually," I said slowly, "this entire house belongs to me. Dad left it to me in his will, so technically I could choose any room I want." "No, this is ridiculous," Emma shot back, standing up so quickly her chair nearly toppled over. "I had everything set up in that room for college. My desk, my vanity, everything. Now I'm supposed to cram it all into a room half the size because Princess April decided to grace us with her presence." She stormed out, slamming her door so hard that the dishes rattled. Mom gave me a reproachful look. "Did you have to provoke her?" I stared at her in disbelief. "I provoked her?" She started complaining the moment I walked in the door. Mom's expression hardened. "Let's not do this tonight. You're tired from the drive." But things didn't improve the following day, or the day after that. I started my new job, immersing myself in learning the ropes at the Albany branch. It was smaller than the Boston office, but the work was familiar, and I quickly made my mark. I reconnected with a few high school friends still in town, including my best friend from senior year, Megan, who was now a nurse at the local hospital. 2 weeks after moving back, I returned home from work to find Emma decorating the living room with streamers and balloons. "What's all this?" I asked, setting down my laptop bag. "My birthday party. she replied without looking at me. It's on Saturday. That's cool. Should I get you a gift or something? I attempted to sound polite, even though shopping for my sulky stepsister was the last thing I wanted to do. Emma scoffed. No need, you won't be here. Excuse me? Mom appeared from the kitchen, looking nervous. April, honey, can I talk to you for a minute? She led me to the back porch, where we used to sit and watch the sunset when I was a kid. Now, it was cluttered with Robert's tools and gardening supplies. Emma's having some friends over for her birthday on Saturday, Mom said, twisting her hands together. She was hoping to have the house to herself for the evening. I stared at her. Are you actually asking me to leave my own house for Emma's party? Just for a few hours, you could go to a movie or have dinner with Megan. Are you kidding me, Mom? This is my house. I'm not going to be kicked out for a birthday party I wasn't even invited to. Please don't make this difficult, Mom pleaded. Things have been tense enough since you moved back. And whose fault is that? You all act like I'm intruding when I'm the one who owns this place. Mom's face fell. I thought you might do this as a favor to me. That hurt. I stood up. I won't make a scene at Emma's party. I'll stay in my room, but I'm not leaving. Mom looked disappointed, but nodded. I'll let Emma know. At dinner that night, Emma made her displeasure clear. I guess I'll just have to move my party to Luciano's, she announced dramatically. Since some people, she glared at me, won't compromise. I bit my tongue, focused on my plate, and said nothing. Robert muttered something about the cost of restaurant parties, while Jason, as usual, looked bored with the entire situation. On Saturday, Emma and her friends went to Luciano's for her birthday. The house was blissfully quiet, and I spent the evening in my pajamas, watching movies in the living room and relishing the solitude. For the first time since moving back, I felt at peace in my own home. Life settled into an uncomfortable routine over the next few months. I went to work, came home, and tried to avoid conflict with my housemates. It was hard to think of them as family anymore. Most evenings I'd eat dinner quickly and retreat to my room, or go out with Megan or other friends I had reconnected with. At work, things were progressing well. My boss in Albany appreciated my experience from the Boston office, and I was already being considered for a team lead position. The commute wasn't bad, and I enjoyed the familiar scenery of my hometown. Sometimes during lunch breaks, I'd drive past my old high school or the park where Dad used to take me fishing. One evening in late summer, I came home to find Mom and Robert sitting at the dining table with a stack of papers in front of them. They looked up when I walked in, and something about their expressions made me pause. April, Mom said, her voice oddly formal. We need to talk to you. I sat down, a knot forming in my stomach. Is everything okay? Did something happen? Mom slid some papers toward me. Utility bills, I realized as I glanced at them. We need to discuss the financial situation here. What about it? Robert cleared his throat. Since you moved back, our expenses have increased significantly. Water, electricity, heating, it's all gone up. I contribute to the grocery fund, I reminded her. I give you $300 every month, remember? That's more than my share of the food. Mom and Robert exchanged a look. That's just for food, Mom said. It doesn't cover the other expenses. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. What are you saying? We think it would be fair if you paid rent, Robert stated bluntly. $1,000 a month. Are you serious? My voice rose in disbelief. This is my house. Dad left it to me. I'm the one who should be charging rent if anyone is, I said defiantly. Robert's expression hardened. Now listen here, young lady. We've been maintaining this house for 8 years while you were off living your life in Boston. We've paid the property taxes, fixed the roof, and replaced the water heater. I never asked you to do any of that, I shot back, and I offered multiple times to help with major expenses, but Mom always said you had it covered. I looked at Mom, hoping she would support me, but instead she looked away, her lips pressed together. Mom, I pleaded, you can't seriously expect me to pay rent for my own house. If you can't contribute financially, Robert said coldly, then perhaps you should find somewhere else to live. His words hit me like a physical blow. I turned to Mom again, certain she would object to her husband telling her daughter to leave her own home. But she merely nodded slightly, agreeing with him. I left the room before they could see the tears threatening to spill. In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to process what had just happened. The house was quiet, but my thoughts were deafening. Sleep eluded me that night. By morning, I had shifted from shock to anger. I dressed for work mechanically, bracing myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. When I went downstairs for breakfast, the whole family was already there. Mom, Robert, Jason slouched over his cereal, and Emma, who looked up with a smirk that suggested she knew exactly what had transpired the night before. "So," she said sweetly as I poured a cup of coffee, "when are you going to start paying rent? Or are you moving out?" Something inside me snapped. I set my mug down carefully and returned her smile. "Actually, I've made a decision." All eyes turned to me. "This house belongs to me," I stated, my voice steady and calm despite the rage simmering inside. "It was left to me by my father. Everyone else here lives in this house because I allow it." Robert started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. "Starting next month, I'll be implementing a new arrangement. Each of you, Mom, Robert, Emma, and Jason, will pay $500 a month in rent. That's $2,000 total." A stunned silence fell over the kitchen. Emma's mouth hung open in shock. "You're joking," Mom finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm absolutely serious. Consider it the market rate for the area, split 4 ways. It's actually quite reasonable." "You can't charge us rent," Emma shrieked. "You're insane." I took a sip of my coffee, oddly calm in the face of their outrage. "If you don't like the terms, you're welcome to find another place to live." "I'm sure there are plenty of rental properties in Pinewood," I replied defiantly. "You would throw out your own mother?" Robert demanded, standing up to tower over me. I met his gaze steadily. "No, I would charge my mother and her family a fair rent for a property they don't own." "After everything we've done for you," Mom said, her voice trembling, "we've maintained this house and paid all the bills. While living here for free," I cut in. "And now you want to charge me rent for my own property. How is that any different from what I'm proposing?" I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. "Think it over. Let me know what you decide." The drive to work was a blur. Part of me couldn't believe what I'd just done, but another part, a stronger part, knew it was long overdue. They had pushed me too far, and something had to change. That night, I picked up takeout on the way home and ate in my room. No one spoke to me. The next day was the same, and the day after that. I had become a ghost in my own house, ignored by everyone, even my mother. 2 weeks of icy silence passed. I bought my own groceries and kept them separate in the fridge. I did my laundry when no one else was around. I missed my mother, but I wouldn't back down, not this time. Finally, one Sunday afternoon, Mom and Robert cornered me in the living room. "We've made a decision," Robert announced stiffly. "We're moving out. We found an apartment on the other side of town." I nodded slowly, a mix of emotions washing over me. Relief that the tension would finally end. Sadness that it had come to this, and lingering anger that they, especially my mother, had put me in this position in the first place. "When?" I asked. "Next weekend," Mom said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We've already signed the lease." "I'm taking what I paid for," Robert added, his tone challenging. "The washing machine, the dishwasher, the TV in the living room." "That's fine," I cut him off. "Take whatever you bought." The next week was filled with the sounds of packing and moving. Emma made a point of slamming doors and drawers whenever I was nearby. Jason mostly kept to himself. Mom barely spoke to me, focusing on organizing and packing. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, watching her choose Robert and his children over me so definitively. On Friday night, Robert rented a moving truck. I stayed out of the way as they loaded furniture and boxes. Some of the items they took were definitely purchases my father had made, like the dining table and some kitchen appliances. But I didn't have the energy to fight about it anymore. When they were nearly finished, I noticed them struggling to maneuver the old grandfather clock that had been my father's pride and joy. It had stood in our entryway for as long as I could remember. "That stays," I said firmly, stepping into the hallway. Robert frowned. "I paid to have it repaired 3 years ago. It wasn't working when your father died." "The clock was my dad's. He bought it from an antique shop the year I was born. It stays." For a moment, I thought he would argue, but Mom put a hand on his arm and shook her head slightly. They moved away from the clock. As they made their final trip to the truck, Mom lingered behind in the kitchen. "I never thought it would end like this," she said quietly. "Neither did I replied. "But you gave me no choice." Mom looked away. "I thought you'd be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I echoed. Was it reasonable to let Emma treat me like an intruder? Was it reasonable to ask me to leave my own house for her birthday? Was it reasonable to side with your husband over your daughter at every turn? Robert has been good to me, April. He took care of us after your father died. He moved into my house and acted like he owned it, and you let him. Mom sighed heavily. I can see we're not going to agree on this. I should go. They're waiting for me. Goodbye, Mom. And just like that, they were gone. The house, which had felt crowded and hostile for months, was suddenly achingly empty. That first night alone, I wandered from room to room, taking stock of what remained and what I would need to replace. The living room was missing its couch and TV. The kitchen lacked a microwave and coffee maker. 3 of the bedrooms were now empty, stripped of beds and dressers. But instead of feeling sad or lonely, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. This was my house, truly mine now, in a way it hadn't been since my father died. I could do whatever I wanted with it, fill it with my own choices, and make it a home again. The next day I drove to the nearest home goods store and bought a new couch, a coffee maker, and essentials for the kitchen. I ordered a bed frame online and scheduled delivery for a new mattress. Over the weekend, I deep cleaned every room, opening windows to let fresh air circulate through the house. On Monday, I returned to work with a lighter heart. My coworkers noticed the change. You seem different, my manager commented, more relaxed. I smiled. Things have settled at home. Megan came over that evening to see the new arrangements. She whistled as she walked through the half-empty rooms. Wow, they really cleaned you out, huh? Yep, but now I get to start fresh and make it mine again. She helped me arrange the new furniture and hung some photographs I'd framed. Pictures of my dad and me fishing, my high school graduation, and the friends I'd made in Boston. Do you regret it? She asked as we stepped back to admire our work. She asked as we sat on my new couch, drinking wine from coffee mugs because I hadn't replaced the glassware yet. Standing your ground? I thought about it for a moment. No, I miss my mom, and I wish things had turned out differently, but I don't regret standing up for myself. My birthday came in early October. I didn't expect to hear from Mom, but the silence still stung. Aunt Susan called to wish me a happy birthday and awkwardly mentioned that she'd seen Mom and Robert at the grocery store, and they seemed to be doing well. She didn't even ask about me, did she? I said. Aunt Susan's hesitation spoke volumes. Give her time, April. She's stubborn, just like you. I don't communicate with my mother or her family now. They didn't tell me their new address, and I haven't asked for it. Mom didn't even call on my birthday, which hurt, but it made it clear where her priorities lie, with Robert and his children, not with me. I hear from relatives that they're doing fine, and that's enough for me. I live alone in my house now, but I don't feel lonely. For the first time in years, I feel at peace. This is my home, and I've reclaimed it. Whatever the future holds, I know I made the right choice in standing up for myself. Dad would have been proud.